In the heart of ancient Rome, where marble temples stretched toward the sky and the Senate echoed with the heated debates of men hungry for power, lived a woman whose name would soon surpass theirs in infamy. Livia was unlike anyone Rome had ever known. While others relied on lineage or wealth to climb the rungs of influence, Livia relied on something far more potent: her mind. She was born in the crowded alleys of the Subura district, a place teeming with merchants, thieves, and the desperate cries of those trying to escape their station in life. Livia's mother was a seamstress, her father a potter. Their existence was humble, but even as a child, Livia's keen observations set her apart. She would watch the noblewomen glide through the streets in silks and jewels, their attendants trailing behind, and she learned. She studied their posture, the tilt of their heads, the way they spoke as though the world itself was meant to serve them. But it wasn't just her sharp mind that marked her for greatness. Livia possessed a beauty that could stop conversations mid-sentence. Her raven-black hair tumbled like waves, her emerald eyes gleamed with an intensity that could both disarm and entice, and her voice, soft and melodic, carried a magnetic pull. Yet Livia knew beauty alone was fleeting. Rome was a city of whispers and schemes, where power changed hands, not by brute strength, but by persuasion. At 16, her path became clear. Her family's debts had spiraled out of control, and with no other options, Livia took the boldest step of her life. She left home. Guided by her instincts, she made her way to the grand villa of Domina Tullia, one of Rome's most renowned courtesans. It was said that Tullia's protégée could bend senators to their will with a smile. Livia begged for a chance to learn, promising to repay the favor in time. Tullia saw the potential in the girl. She trained Livia not only in the arts of charm and seduction, but in the nuances of conversation, strategy, and the art of reading a room. Under Tullia's guidance, Livia flourished. By the time she turned 18, she was no longer the seamstress's daughter, but a woman of poise and purpose. Her first encounter with the world of power came at a lavish banquet hosted by a wealthy patrician. The air was heavy with incense and ambition, the tables laden with exotic fruits and roasted meats. Livia entered the hall like a storm wrapped in silk, every eye drawn to her. She didn't need to command attention. It was simply given to her. The men at the banquet were powerful, their words sharp and their ambitions sharper. Livia listened carefully, her laughter timed perfectly, her compliments subtle yet effective. By the end of the evening, she had gained the favor of a merchant who promised to introduce her to Rome's inner circle. It was her first step toward a life that would change not only her destiny, but the fate of Rome itself. For Livia, this was just the beginning. Livia quickly learned that Rome was a city where appearances were everything. Men measured power in the size of their estates, the number of slaves they commanded, and their proximity to the emperor. But beneath this glittering facade lay a world driven by ambition and desire, where the right whisper in the right ear could change the course of empires. It was a world Livia intended to master. Tullia, her mentor, had often told her, "Charm is not merely about beauty. It is about making a man believe that he is the most important person in the room, and convincing him that he can't live without you." Livia took this advice to heart, transforming herself into a woman who could disarm even the most hardened politician with a glance. Her first true test came when she set her sights on Senator Marcus Quintus, a man of immense power and even greater vanity. Marcus was known throughout Rome for his fiery speeches in the Senate and his ruthless climb up the political ladder. He was also known for his weakness for beautiful women, a fact that Livia intended to exploit. She studied him carefully before making her move. Livia didn't just walk into a room hoping to attract attention. She ensured that every step, every word, and every gesture was calculated. She learned which gods he revered, what foods he favored, and the routes he took to the forum each morning. She even befriended one of his household slaves to glean more about his habits and preferences. When the moment came, it was almost too easy. Livia made her entrance at a private gathering hosted by one of Marcus's peers. Draped in a gown of deep emerald green that matched her eyes, she exuded an air of elegance that immediately caught his attention. But rather than throwing herself at him, as so many others did, Livia played her part with subtlety. She began by ignoring him, engaging instead in conversation with others in the room. Her laughter rang out like music, her wit sharp enough to draw smiles from even the most stoic men. It wasn't long before Marcus himself approached her, intrigued by the woman who seemed impervious to his usual charms. "Tell me, my lady," he said with a smirk, "what brings such radiance to a dull evening like this?" Livia turned to him, her eyes gleaming with amusement. "Why, Senator, I was merely trying to find someone worth speaking to. It seems my search is over." That was all it took. Marcus was enthralled. Over the next few weeks, Livia skillfully wove her way into his life. She praised his intellect, listened attentively to his stories, and flattered him in ways that felt genuine. Marcus, blinded by his own ego, never suspected that she was using him as a stepping stone. Through Marcus, Livia gained access to Rome's political elite. She attended Senate banquets, mingled with influential figures, and learned the intricacies of the power dynamics that governed the city. But while others saw her as merely a charming companion, Livia was always listening, always calculating. She never asked for favors directly, knowing that subtlety was her greatest weapon. Instead, she planted ideas in Marcus's mind, letting him believe they were his own. When Marcus secured a lucrative contract for a merchant she had befriended, Livia's influence became undeniable. Yet she remained careful, never overplaying her hand or revealing the full extent of her ambitions. To Marcus, she was simply a muse, an enchanting presence who inspired him to greater heights. But Livia knew the truth. She was no muse. She was a strategist, a woman who had turned seduction into an art form and power into her ultimate goal. And with Marcus under her spell, the doors of Rome were beginning to open for her. For Livia, this was only the next step in a much grander plan. By now, Livia's reputation had begun to precede her. In the elite circles of Rome, she was admired as a stunning companion, envied for her proximity to power, and whispered about as a woman capable of bending even the most unyielding men to her will. But Livia knew that one man's favor was never enough to secure her ambitions. Power in Rome was fragmented, a puzzle of competing interests, and she intended to master every piece. Her next moves were as calculated as they were bold. Livia set her sights on two new figures: General Lucius Aemilianus, a celebrated war hero with legions under his command, and Gaius Lentulus, a wealthy merchant who controlled vast trade routes flowing into Rome. Each man wielded a different kind of power. Lucius commanded the loyalty of soldiers, while Gaius held the purse strings of the empire. Together, they represented two of the most influential spheres in Roman society. Lucius was a man of discipline and action, a soldier forged in the crucible of war. His rugged features bore the marks of countless battles, and his stern demeanor intimidated most. But beneath his hardened exterior lay a craving for admiration and tenderness, something Livia was quick to exploit. She crossed paths with him at a celebration, honoring Rome's military victories, where she approached him not with flattery, but with a quiet admiration for his service. "You've seen the world beyond these walls, General," she said, her voice soft and sincere. "What wisdom must you carry from it?" Lucius, unaccustomed to such genuine curiosity, found himself captivated. Over time, Livia became his confidant, the one person who could soothe his restless spirit. She encouraged him to share stories of his conquests, subtly positioning herself as the only one who truly understood his burdens. Meanwhile, Her relationship with Gaius Lentulus unfolded on an entirely different note. Gaius was a man of extravagance and indulgence, a sharp contrast to Lucius's stoicism. His lavish parties were legendary, his wealth so immense that even senators sought his favour. Livia first encountered him at one of these opulent gatherings, where she effortlessly matched his wit and charm, earning his undivided attention. To Gaius, Livia represented refinement and intellect, a rare blend that set her apart from the women who usually sought his company. She flattered his ambitions, praised his keen business sense, and subtly planted ideas of how his influence could extend even further. Gaius, intoxicated by her presence, quickly became her ally. But Livia's true genius lay not in winning the favour of powerful men, but in playing them against each other. She carefully cultivated the rivalry between Lucius and Gaius, feeding their egos while ensuring they saw each other as threats. A casual remark to Lucius about Gaius's wealth would spark a hint of disdain. A playful comment to Gaius about Lucius's military prowess would ignite envy. Neither man realized that the tension between them was carefully orchestrated by Livia herself. As their rivalry grew, so too did the rumors. Whispers began to circulate in the upper echelons of Roman society about the courtesan, who seemed to hold the fate of generals and merchants alike in her delicate hands. Some marveled at her influence, while others grew suspicious of her intentions. But Livia was always one step ahead. She deflected suspicion with her characteristic charm, laughing off accusations as baseless gossip. "Men love to exaggerate," she would say with a knowing smile, her tone light yet firm enough to silence her critics. She continued to host elegant gatherings, where her grace and intelligence disarmed even her most skeptical observers. At the same time, Livia took great care to ensure that Lucius and Gaius remained devoted to her. She crafted each interaction with precision, giving just enough to keep them enchanted without ever revealing her true intentions. She knew that their loyalty was her greatest weapon, and that to lose their trust would be to lose everything. Through this delicate balancing act, Livia not only maintained her position but strengthened it. The rivalries she fostered ensured that neither Lucius nor Gaius dared to challenge her, lest they risk exposing their own vulnerabilities. And while the rest of Rome speculated about her growing influence, Livia continued to weave her web, each strand bringing her closer to the power she so carefully pursued. For Livia, the tangled webs she spun were not obstacles but opportunities. And in the city of ambition and intrigue, she had already proven herself a master of both. By now, Livia's ambitions had grown far beyond the corridors of wealthy merchants and celebrated generals. Her influence over Lucius Aemilianus and Gaius Lentulus had given her a foothold in Rome's social and political elite. But she had always known that true power lay at the very top. The emperor himself was the ultimate prize, and Livia had her sights firmly set on him. To reach him, however, she needed to tread carefully. Her path led her through Lucius Valerian, one of the emperor's closest advisors. Valerian, a man of sharp intellect and unshakable loyalty to the throne, was known for his decisiveness and strategic mind. He was the gatekeeper to the emperor, the filter through which all requests and counsel passed. Winning him over was crucial, but it wouldn't be easy. Livia began her campaign with calculated subtlety. She approached Lucius not with the flirtatious charm she had used with others, but with a keen understanding of his priorities. She admired his dedication to Rome and spoke to him as an equal, impressing him with her insights into the city's political affairs. At first, Lucius regarded her with suspicion. He had seen too many ambitious courtiers to be easily swayed. But Livia's intelligence and disarming wit gradually broke through his defences. It wasn't long before Lucius, too, became enamored with her. Unlike the others, he prided himself on his self-control and believed that he could keep his emotions separate from his decisions. But Livia knew better. She fed his ego in ways that were almost imperceptible. making him feel not just admired but indispensable. Through Lucius, Livia gained unprecedented access to the emperor's inner circle. She attended banquets and private gatherings where decisions that shaped the empire were made. Though she remained in the background, her presence was always felt. She listened intently, storing away every detail that could prove useful. And when the moment was right, she began to plant the seeds of doubt and division. Livia's influence on Lucius became evident as he started advocating for policies and decisions that, while seemingly harmless, began to sow instability within the emperor's court. She was careful never to push too hard or too fast, knowing that subtlety was her greatest weapon. A casual remark here, a thoughtful suggestion there, it was all she needed to nudge events in her favour. But as Livia's web of influence grew, so too did the risks. One of her previous conquests, Gaius Lentulus, had begun to suspect that Livia's motives were not as innocent as she portrayed them to be. Gaius, though still infatuated with her, had started to piece together the connections between her actions and the growing tensions within Rome's political sphere. At first, he dismissed his suspicions as jealousy, but the more he observed, the clearer it became that Livia was orchestrating something far greater than he had imagined. Gaius wrestled with his emotions, torn between his lingering affection for her and his fear of what her ambitions might bring. Unaware of Gaius's suspicions, Livia continued her manipulation of Lucius. Through him, she maneuvered closer to the emperor, carefully positioning herself as an unseen but undeniable force within his court. Yet even as her power grew, the cracks in her carefully constructed facade began to show. Whispers of her influence spread throughout Rome, and the once admiring glances she received at banquets were now tinged with suspicion. Some saw her as a cunning strategist, others as a dangerous interloper. But Livia remained undeterred. She knew that power always came with a price, and she was willing to pay it. As the emperor's court grew more divided and tensions rose, Livia's role in the unfolding drama became increasingly precarious. She had achieved what few could dream of, access to the most powerful man in the world. But with every step closer to her goal, the risks multiplied, and the shadows of betrayal loomed ever larger. For Livia, the path to power was a delicate dance, a game of strategy where every move counted. But in the city of Rome, where ambition and treachery were two sides of the same coin, even the most masterful players could find themselves undone. And as the walls of her carefully constructed world began to tremble, Livia knew that the true test of her cunning was yet to come. Chapter 5. The Climax. The air in Rome was heavy with anticipation. Livia's influence had reached its zenith, her whispered words driving decisions that rippled through the empire. Senators debated fiercely, alliances shifted overnight, and the emperor himself seemed more isolated than ever. In the shadows, Livia smiled. She had spent years carefully building her web, and now she was ready to pull the final string. Through Lucius, her loyal pawn, Livia had sown doubts about the emperor's fitness to rule. A series of missteps, carefully orchestrated by her manipulation, had left the emperor vulnerable. Whispers of rebellion grew louder, and even the emperor's closest advisors began to question his authority. Livia knew the end was near. One final push would bring the ruler to his knees, leaving a power vacuum she could exploit. But power was a double-edged sword, and Livia's ascent had not gone unnoticed. Gaius Lentulus, the general who had once been hopelessly enamored with her, had been watching from the sidelines. His suspicions had turned into certainty, and his pride had been wounded by the realization that he was just another pawn in Livia's game. Fueled by jealousy and anger, Gaius decided it was time to act. He approached Lucius in secret, sharing what he had uncovered about Livia's schemes. At first, Lucius refused to believe him. He had placed Livia on a pedestal, convinced of her loyalty and affection. But as Gaius presented evidence, letters, overheard conversations, and accounts of Livia's dealings with other powerful men, Lucius felt the ground beneath him shift. The woman he had trusted, even loved, had been using him all along. Lucius confronted Livia in the dead of night, his face pale with anger and betrayal. For the first time, Livia's composure wavered. She had expected resistance, even suspicion, but not from Lucius. He had been her most valuable asset, her pathway to the emperor, and now he stood before her, ready to bring her entire world crashing down. But Livia was no stranger to betrayal. She met Lucius's accusations with a calm, measured voice, denying nothing but shifting the blame. She painted Gaius as a man driven by jealousy, a spurned lover desperate to ruin her because he could not have her. And then, with a sly smile, she revealed secrets of her own, secrets about Gaius that could destroy his reputation and career. It was a gamble, and Livia knew it. Lucius was torn between his fury and the doubt she had planted in his mind. Could Gaius truly be trusted? Was his betrayal motivated by noble intentions or petty revenge? As Lucius hesitated, Livia leaned in, her voice soft but unwavering. "Think carefully, Lucius," she whispered. "Would you destroy me, only to hand Rome over to a man like Gaius? Or will you let me finish what we started and secure your place in history?" Lucius faltered, and in that moment, Livia seized the upper hand. Gaius's accusations were dismissed as the ravings of a jealous fool, and Livia's position, though shaken, remained intact. But the cost was high. The whispers of her influence had turned into shouts, and the emperor's court was now a powder keg, ready to explode. Livia had survived betrayal, but she knew the endgame was approaching. And in the city of Rome, where power was fleeting and alliances were fragile, survival would require more than cunning. It would demand sacrifice. Rome was in turmoil. The emperor had fallen, and the city was left in chaos, its leaders scrambling to seize control of the fractured empire. Amid the confusion, one figure was notably absent: Livia. The woman who had moved the most powerful men in Rome like pieces on a chessboard had vanished without a trace. Her disappearance was as sudden as her rise. Some whispered she had fled to a distant province, living under a new name. Others claimed she had met a darker fate, silenced by those who feared her knowledge. But the truth was as elusive as Livia herself. In her absence, the men she had controlled turned on each other. Lucius, once her closest ally, now sought to consolidate his power. Gaius, humiliated but still hungry for influence, led a faction of his own. The wealthy merchant Marcus, left adrift without Livia's guidance, aligned himself with whomever seemed most likely to win. Rivalries flared, alliances crumbled, and Rome's streets became battlegrounds of ambition and betrayal. Through it all, Livia's name lingered like a ghost. Her influence was everywhere, even in her absence. Decisions were made based on what she might have done, and every new scheme was compared to her own. She had left a vacuum so profound that the city itself seemed unable to recover. But for those who truly knew her, the question remained: why had Livia done it? Was it power she sought, or something else entirely? For some, she was a villain, a manipulative force who had torn Rome apart for her own gain. For others, she was a survivor, a woman who had navigated a man's world with unparalleled cunning. She had played the game better than anyone, and when the risks became too high, she had walked away, leaving her rivals to destroy each other. Rumours spread of her whereabouts. A sailor claimed to have seen her boarding a ship bound for Alexandria. A merchant swore she was hiding in the hills of Gaul. Yet another story said she had disguised herself as a priestess and was living in peace among the temples of Greece. No one could confirm any of these tales, but they only added to the legend of Livia. In the years that followed, her story grew. Songs were written about her, and playwrights turned her life into dramas performed in crowded amphitheatres. To some, she was a hero who had exposed the weaknesses of Rome's leaders. To others, she was a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition. But Livia herself remained a mystery. No one truly knew what drove her, whether it was the desire for power, the thrill of the game, or simply the need to survive in a world that sought to crush her. Her name became immortal, etched into the memory of Rome. Livia, the courtesan who controlled its most powerful men, had left a legacy that could never be erased. Feared, admired, and always enigmatic, she remained a figure of fascination, her true motives hidden forever in the shadows of history.